Hey everyone, I'm Marvin, and this is episode 1 of the Millennial Buddhist podcast. Hello everyone, and welcome to episode number 1 of Millennial Buddhist podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today in our very first series of Millennial Buddhist podcast. I have my very good friend Ashira, who's gonna speak about her amazing life. Let me tell you guys, when the first time I heard her talk about just a snippet of the things that she's involved in, my mind was completely blown. She's going to be talking about the wonderful organization that she has, which empowers women who were once in the brothels in India. Okay, yeah, that's pretty amazing. And she's also going to be talking about studying at Naropa University, which is the first Buddhist university here in the United States. And she's going to go into how she found her soulmate on the path, I don't know. What do you think? Is it possible to find love on the spiritual path? We'll find out what Ashira thinks. I'm Marvin. This is episode number 1. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. So hello, Ashira. Welcome to the podcast, The Millennial Buddhist. Thank you so much for coming and agreeing to being on the show today.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah. If you want to, just tell the audience a little bit about yourself, as far as your business is concerned and what it is that you do and the great work that you're doing.
My name's Ashira, and I grew up in Salt Lake City, Utah. I attended Naropa University in Boulder, Colorado for school. I am a social entrepreneur and an ethical fashion designer. I am also a Buddhist. I was inspired to start a business with my now husband called Jewel and Lotus, which is a global community and ethical marketplace. Essentially, we're like an Etsy, but with all ethically made products. Our goal is to change the way people shop and to help alleviate poverty and support amazing social enterprises and nonprofits around the world.
So you say that you have your business and it promotes an ethical marketplace. And I know that you started with the group the Stop Trafficking and Oppression of Children and Women. So can you tell me, how did that come about?
Yeah, so actually, I first connected with Stop when I was 19 years old. It was during the summer break of when I was at school, and um, my dad actually met Roma, who started Stop a few years beforehand, and he asked me to go visit them in Delhi. So Stop is an organization that's fighting human trafficking in India and rescues girls from the brothels and other exploitative situations. So I went to Delhi when I was 19 and met Roma, and we connected really deeply. And she's like, "Someday you're going to help us." And
Hmm.
I was like, yeah, maybe. I don't really have any skills right now, but I would like to.
Mm-hmm.
So I just kept going back to India and working with the girls and supporting Stop. Started by teaching meditation and
Oh,
yoga and also
okay.
making malas with the girls.
Mm-hmm.
But over the years, I saw that actually the girls were really struggling with becoming adults and finding
Mm.
sustainable livelihood and work. And a lot of the girls ended up going back to the brothels or running away.
Oh,
And
wow.
so it's really tragic. It's been hard loving so many of these girls and seeing them going back into suffering.
Wow.
So um, my work with Stop influenced me to also start Jewel and Lotus because I see what exploitation does to a person.
Okay.
Buying things in China now that are made by people being exploited isn't really okay for me anymore,
Right.
because I know how much harm that causes on a person.
Right. So do you have any of the girls who were with Stop um working with you with Jewel and Lotus?
Yeah, so shortly after we started Jewel and Lotus, we went back to India and started a social enterprise with some of the girls from Stop. And it's called Salila Rising, Threads for
Okay.
Freedom. And Salila means flowing water, and it's a feminine word in Sanskrit.
Okay.
And so Salila Rising is about the rising of the feminine and the rising of women.
Right.
And we make some awesome fashion apparel, including kimonos and kaftans. And we also make really cool block printed napkins, which are
Ooh.
a bestseller.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's cool because like Jewel and Lotus is like the big platform where like businesses and social enterprises like Salila Rising can do well.
Mm-hmm.
But we also have experience on the other end of running a social enterprise and seeing the challenges with that.
Okay.
Hmm.
So the girls who come in and they work with you, do you find that you have to do something a little bit more to help keep them engaged, keep them involved, to keep their spirits up, considering what they had just come from?
That's a good question. Um, I would say like every girl is has their own story and experience. Some girls need more support than others. Um, all the girls working for Salila Rising were rescued from the brothels and other
Wow.
situations, maybe 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So all the girls we are working with Salila Rising are quite well adjusted and are really happy actually. They have their struggles, but they're not like devastated or anything.
Right. I just think that's simply amazing, what you do. I remember when I first met you in Nepal, and you told me some of the stories of what the girls had gone through. I was just amazed at you and your work, because so many of us every day say to ourselves, I want to help, I want to do something, I want to change the world. But honestly, Ashira, you are one person who truly is making a mark on the world, and contributing and helping people who really need help. And I commend you for that. It's just the work that you do. It's so great, and you're reaching out to a segment of the population that really does not necessarily have a voice, as loud as it should. And I really commend you for that. Thank you.
Mm.
On behalf of every human being, thank you. Um, so you said that you went to Naropa University,
Hmm.
right? Out in Colorado.
Yep.
So before that, was your family, do they identify as Buddhist?
So actually, I grew up Jewish in
Okay.
Utah, so that was pretty interesting.
Wow, in Utah.
Yeah, so surrounded by Mormons.
Uh-huh.
Um, but my family is not Buddhist or spiritual at all. From a very young age, I found myself being very spiritual. Um, and then after a lot of drama and trauma,
Mm-hmm.
I came to a point in my life where either I was going to die or I had to find a different way to live.
Wow.
So when
That's
I,
powerful. That's a
yeah,
great statement, yeah.
yeah, it's the way it was. So after a few years of being self-destructive, when I was 15, I started picking up Shambhala Sun magazine and reading Buddhist things and other spiritual things. And I think the moment that Buddhism really hit me was I was 16 years old, sitting on my love sack and reading
Mm-hmm.
Shambhala Sun. And I came across this article by Pema Chodron sitting, um, I think it was burning the seeds in the fire.
Mm-hmm.
And it just totally changed my whole life and perspective on everything because it was about moving towards emotion and moving towards pain instead of avoiding it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember that moment so vividly of being like, oh my gosh, like I don't have to keep running from this pain and like
Mm-hmm.
I can actually move towards it and find peace and liberation in that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I was reading Buddhist text in high school. And then when it came time to go to college, I was like, hell no, I don't want to go to college. Like, screw these institutions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then my dad, he got me a Princeton review book and was like, please just look at some schools.
Oh.
And that first night, I was looking through and found Naropa, and it was like Tibetan Buddhist, 95% acceptance rate, and the Jack Kerouac School of Disembodied Poetics. So I was like, I'm going there.
Yeah.
It was like made for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So your family was supportive when you told them I want to go to Naropa and I want to be a Buddhist scholar?
My family was just happy I wanted to go to school. Like, I kind
Okay.
of set them up in that situation of like, I'm not going to college.
Mm-hmm.
So then when I found a school, they were just happy that I decided to go to school.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is Buddhist college like? Like what's that like? How does it differ from your traditional university or college?
Yeah. Naropa is so special. It was founded by Choyam Trungpa Rinpoche.
Right.
And it doesn't push Buddhism on its students at all. But, in the first year, you're reading Shambhala, Sacred Path of the Warrior,
Mm-hmm.
being introduced to basic goodness. And that really sets the tone for the 4 years of school. And um, Naropa is a really special place because they really, the teachers see the value in the students. And um, it's not like a banking model university where the teacher's like, this is the truth, this is what you need to know, regurgitate it back to me in a test.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, hey, so like, what do you think about this principle? How can you apply this to your life? Like, oh, you don't agree with that? Why?
Mm-hmm.
Your
Mm.
voice is valid, your opinion is valid. Um,
So challenging the status quo is encouraged.
Totally encouraged. And like, if you don't go deep and cry a few times in class, you probably aren't going to pass.
Wow.
Just
Wow.
halfway kidding on that. But
Okay.
I mean, there's a lot of classes where people cry a lot.
Yeah. I'm sure. I mean, when you're in a school setting and it's centered around going through a spiritual journey, like so many emotions come up. I've sat in class at the Shedra and teared up several times and thought
Mhm.
this didn't happen at traditional college. Why is it happening now? So at at Naropa, like your classes, are they centered around philosophy? Are they centered around actual practice and meditation? And also, is there any like classes where you have to take like calculus or like any of the traditional classes that you'd have to take in college?
So Naropa is a liberal arts school, and there's different departments and majors. Honestly, I didn't take Buddhist classes at Naropa much. Um, it is very much focused around like intellectual Buddhism,
Okay.
and my path has always been more devotional.
Okay.
So I ended up studying yoga and like more
Oh.
Hindu tantric philosophy and Eastern arts. When I first started at Naropa, I did a lot of meditation courses,
Okay.
but I didn't end up studying Tibetan Buddhism at Naropa.
So you studied a lot of yoga and meditation. My question is like, how do you fail that class? Like, if you can't do the downward dog, do you fail, or how does that work?
I think the only way you fail that class, like a yoga class, is if you don't show up and write your papers.
Okay.
And then at the end of every semester, you have warrior exams. It's like your final exam. So
Okay.
I'm guessing people could fail those. But those are super cool. Essentially, like you pick a question and you go up in front of the class with another person and you have to show that you really understand the question and the principle and can go deep with it.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's kind of intimidating, but cool.
Yeah, it sounds cool. It sounds like something that a lot of people would be interested in. So you said you didn't necessarily study Tibetan Buddhism too much at Naropa. So how did you encounter Tibetan Buddhism?
Yeah, so I didn't study Tibetan Buddhism at Naropa. And then when I was graduating, I had a really strong feeling I had to go back to India. So I decided to go back and study Ayurveda and Tantric yoga.
Okay.
And I did these amazing retreats with David Frawley and his wife Shambhavi. And we were at the Ganga making offerings at the Ganga, with the candles and the flowers. And
Mm-hmm.
they were saying, like, oh, make prayers to be brought to the lotus feet of the goddess. And then at one point I realized, I was like, you know what? Like, I've always known my path was about benefiting beings.
Uh-huh.
And so that night when making the offering, I just really prayed for all beings all over the world. And that night, my
Hmm.
banana leaf boat like stayed afloat longer than ever, and the light was flickering and
Mm.
staying alive. And I
Mm-hmm.
realized, like, oh wait, like this isn't enough for me. And so then I went back to Beer, India, to Deer
Okay.
Park Institute, and I met Dungze Jompal Norbu,
Okay.
and I asked him a lot of questions about Buddhism, and um, and then I decided I was going to take refuge,
Hmm.
and with a lot of guts and ego, probably, I was like, I'm going to take refuge with the Karmapa.
Wow.
So
Wow.
yeah, like a few days after my 24th birthday, or 23rd birthday,
Uh-huh.
I had a private audience with His Holiness the Karmapa and took
Wow.
refuge.
Oh, that is awesome. What was that? What was the ceremony like? How was that?
It was really beautiful. Yeah, I called the his monastery like 20 times, finally got through and got a date for the private audience. And
Mm-hmm.
when I walked into the room with him, it was just like the room was like pulsating with so much energy. And
Wow.
so I like prostrated and then sat down and asked him a few questions. And then at the end, I was like, can I take refuge with you?
Just want to throw that in there. Can I take refuge with you?
Yeah. And he said yes. And then
Wow.
it was just a simple ceremony. And I got a name card and
Mm-hmm.
a string and a blessing. So
What's your name? What's your Dharma name translated?
my refuge name is Karma Dolma, which is the enlightened activities of Tara.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice. Mine is Shedrub Norbu, which means the jewel of insight.
Mm.
Yeah.
Who did you take refuge with?
Chokini Rinpoche.
Mm.
Yeah, at the November seminar
Mm.
in 2012. So, yeah, that's a day I'll never forget.
Hmm.
Um, so you said that you had this calling to go back to India, and I have to tell you, there have been many times in my life in the past 3 years where I've just had this like calling to go home to India, and I've never been to India.
Hmm.
So what do you think that is like this calling to just to go to India?
Hmm. I think it's our karma and
Uh-huh.
maybe like our destiny calling. I personally believe that there are lessons and things we need to learn in different places, and that those places call us to
Mm-hmm.
them.
Yeah. Um, I think it's a karmic connection too. I often wonder to myself, I'm like, well, maybe in a past life I lived in India, or maybe I was a dog on the side of the road in India and I just really liked it there. I don't even know. But yeah, sometimes I just have these feelings of like, God, I miss India, and it's like, what are you talking about? You've never been to India.
Hmm.
So I think you're right. Karma has something to do with it.
Mm.
So now you are back in the U.S., right?
Yep.
And you're a married lady
Yep.
to an amazing guy who I read the article that was done about how you two met, and that was a sweet love story. Can you
Oh.
tell us about that?
Yeah. So, a few years ago when I was in Nepal, um, trying to find love and happiness and studying the Dharma, and
Hmm.
I was sitting with Patrick Rinpoche, and he looked at me and he was like, "You need a stable boyfriend." And I kind of laughed under my breath because I was like, "Yeah, right. Like I'm gonna meet a boyfriend in Cooperstown, New York, or in Nepal."
Uh-huh.
And then I went back to New York to Gomde, Cooperstown, where I was working and living. And within a few days, I met Andy. I went to Origins Cafe, like the coolest place in Cooperstown, and
Okay.
um, I saw Andy. He was there, and he was their first woofer, and that's like an organic farmer. And
Oh, okay. I was about to say, what's a
yeah, it's
woofer?
like worldwide organic farming.
Oh,
Um,
okay, okay.
yeah, and so I met him, and I was like, "Whoa, like maybe there is potential."
Hmm.
And then it just really happened so naturally and beautifully, our relationship. I think being in a small town without a lot of distractions is a really good thing for a relationship. And yeah, so once I realized it was getting serious, I was like, yeah, just by the way, like I have to go back to Nepal and India in a few months.
Hmm.
And he was like, oh, well, I saved money to travel all year. So
Wow.
it was awesome because there was just like there were no obstacles in us coming together and being
Uh-huh.
together.
Uh-huh.
And then I like kind of stole him from Origins to come work at Gomde. And he was the cook for the retreats with Patrick Rinpoche and Choling Rinpoche that summer. And I was really nervous about like Patrick Rinpoche meeting him and like what if Rinpoche told me it wasn't a good relationship? What happened
Uh-huh.
to break
Uh-huh.
up with him?
Uh-huh.
Um,
Wow.
but Rinpoche was really supportive of our relationship, and so that was really important to me.
Oh, that's that's really great.
Yeah.
So how do you balance your practice and our desire to detach from all things and love all sentient beings, and how do you balance that with being married? Because if you read some of like the hardcore dharma text, it says give it all up, go to the hills, like there's nothing nothing here, like
Mhm.
and come down and help others. So how do you balance it, and does it
Mm.
help your spiritual path, or do you think it
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the amount of energy I spent trying to meet guys and dating,
mm-hmm,
um, now that can go towards my practice and my work instead,
mm,
because I have a stable relationship.
mm-hmm,
And I think relationships are so great for practice because if you have any like remaining, issues, um, if you have any issues, your relationships will show them to you. Um,
okay, ooh,
yeah, definitely they will.
more
Um,
so than meditation, do you think?
yeah, in
Is
a
it
lot of
different?
ways, like meditation can be kind of like easy, and then
Uh-huh.
relationships, people challenge you. Um, I feel very grateful and like, yeah, very grateful that I found a partner who 100% supports me on my path and is also
Awesome.
a practitioner. Um,
was
so
was he Buddhist before he met you?
no, he wasn't.
Oh,
He was seeking, and he he met Patrick Rinpoche and Choling Rinpoche, and he took refuge in Bodhisattva vows.
nice.
Yeah,
Oh, that's I'm trying not to be bitter over here
oh,
sitting in my closet alone,
you have
but
to rejoice. Then you
I am.
then you bring that energy into your life.
Yeah, I'm just joking, but
Yeah.
when I was reading your story, I was like, "Oh, this is so sweet. Like this is how it's supposed to be done." So,
Uh,
we've spoken a lot about Patrick Rinpoche, and I would love to hear how you first met him and what you thought of him. And I'll tell you my story of
Okay.
what I thought of him and how I met him. Yeah.
Okay, so I was in India and
Hmm.
I had taken refuge about like maybe 8 months before. And then I went through like a breakup and I was really suffering a lot working with the girls in India. And I was just like, maybe I should like go back to the US. Like, I don't have a lot of support here. I'm like totally devastated and just suffering.
Hmm.
And then I got a tarot reading from my good friend, and the reading was like, well, and I had a booked ticket to Bodh Gaya at that point, but I was
Hmm.
like, I don't know if I should go. Like, I'm kind of scared to go by myself right now.
Hmm.
Um, and essentially, the tarot reading was like, if you go to Bodh Gaya, it's going to be like the fulfillment of so many dreams, but it's also going to be complete destruction. And
Hmm.
I was like, I don't think I can do that right now.
Yeah.
And and then it was like, stay in India, but throw out your plans. There's a message for you.
Okay.
And I was like, all right. And I was like, all right, so where should I go? And I like started asking about all these different places I could go, and none of them looked good. So then I was like, all right, well, this person I just met is going to the Andaman Islands and invited me to go with them. Like, I just got some money for Hanukkah. Maybe I could do that.
Okay.
So I asked about that, and it was like, yes, go there. You're going to get a message and you're going to have a great lover. So I
Oh,
was like, all right, I'm doing it.
okay. Yeah. Great lover and a trip. I'm down.
Yeah. So I went to the Andaman Islands and like I was on these beautiful islands, but I was just feeling so much suffering in my heart. Like it was a constant pain. And like nobody was interested in Dharma there. But every day I was like doing refuge and bodhicitta. And
Hmm.
then one day I walked past this like beach hut and somebody was reading Dzongtsar Khyentse Rinpoche's book, What Makes You Not a Buddhist?
Yeah, I love that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then I was like, hey, like there's a Buddhist. And we started talking. I forgot his name right now. I should look it up. But and he's like, oh, you're going to Nepal? You have to meet Patrick Rinpoche and Choki Nyima Rinpoche. They're at the White Gompa. And it just like hit me. And I was just like, that's where I need to go. Like it
Yeah.
was just like very clear, that was the message. Um, So then, like, I went back to the mainland. I went to Mumbai and worked with the Rescue Foundation, who also rescues girls from human trafficking. Got up to Delhi, and then, like, found one of my old journals at the stop in my stop home. And I saw, like, this other Lama had also told me to go to the White Gompa.
Hmm.
And so I was like, okay, wow, I gotta go there. And then I was like at the airport ready to fly to Kathmandu, and this woman comes up to me and she's like, "Excuse me, can you hold my bag for me while I go to the bathroom?" I was like, "Yeah,
Hmm.
sure." I
Hmm.
was like, "This is in America. Like, nobody cares if I'm holding someone's bag."
Uh-huh.
And that ended up being Marcia Dechen Wangmo.
Oh.
Yeah, and she's like, "Oh, you want to meet Patrick Rinpoche? Like, yeah, come to the White Gompa and have lunch with me, and I'll like help you meet him."
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, it's just like everything lined up. It felt like, and then like Marcia called Samton, and she's like, "Okay, Samton will meet you tonight to take you to meet Patrick Rinpoche." And I was like, "All right."
Wow.
So yeah, I remember like walking into the room, and Rinpoche was sitting there with a few close students, and like I went and prostrated, and he's like, "Who taught you to prostrate like that?" Just like right away, he started giving me a hard time and like making fun of me. Um,
That's what he does.
and some of the story I probably shouldn't tell, so I'm not going to. But essentially, Rinpoche just threw my whole world upside down, and
Down, yeah.
he was just like he just totally changed my whole perspective on everything. Because
Yeah.
before meeting him, I was reading like The Way of the Bodhisattva, and I was trying to be
Mm-hmm.
all like nice and compassionate, but
Yeah.
actually I was being like really stupid.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And he really showed me that. And right away I told him, I was like, he's like, so why are you here? Did like Marcia send you to come see me? And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
no. I was like, honestly, I'm suffering a lot and I need help. And
Mm.
I think that moment, like, of just being completely raw and honest, like,
Mm-hmm.
really just opened the doorways to be changed, for me to be
Mm-hmm.
changed. Um, and so I told him about working with the girls in India. And
Mm-hmm.
since that moment, he has been using my work with the girls to teach me. And that's been really helpful.
Oh
So,
wow.
yeah. So after that first meeting, I left and I was just like, I noticed the heaviness in my heart was gone for the first time in months.
Wow.
And I was just like, whoa, I think he's my teacher. Like, and I was like,
Wow.
whoa, I think he's going to destroy me. um, but then he's like, come back and see me. I'll teach you Dharma. And so I was like,
Mm.
all right. So I just kept going back and seeing him.
Yeah, I in one thing that you mentioned, which hit home for me, and also with my first interaction with him, was you were reading the Way of the Bodhisattva, the Bodhicharvatara, and you're trying to mimic this kind of life and try to follow the directions of Shantideva, and you're just like thinking, in your head, you're like, this is what a Buddha should be, and this is what the path looks like, and this is what I must do, and Pakchak Rinpoche has this way of just kind of throwing it in your face, like all of these great masters and all of these great teachers, like before they became enlightened, they were human beings. They had the same pains, mistakes, heartaches, happiness, and heartbreaks that we all had, and they were true to themselves. And one of the if you listen to the Buddha, he said that this is what I know, this is what I learned, this is what I think the truth is. So you can follow it, go ahead, and if not, then no biggie. You know what I'm saying? So, and being authentic and true to yourself is something that's so important with going on to not just the Buddhist path, but any spiritual path. Is like, you have to remember to bring yourself with you,
Mm,
because, going on a spiritual path doesn't mean becoming somebody else.
mm,
It's bringing yourself there with you and refining it and making it better, and seeing what truly lies on the inside. So that really hit home with me.
mm.
As a matter of fact, my first interactions with Pakchak Rinpoche, I did not like him at all. I didn't. So I was completely new to Buddhism. Didn't know anything. I didn't know. I didn't know the Four Noble Truths. Did nothing. And I left everything behind. Went to Nepal. Decided to study at the White Gompa, and I had been used to Chokyam Rinpoche's style of just, how Rinpoche is. It's very comforting, very pith directions, very to the
Mm.
point. There is some humor in there, but he's very just so gentle and so sweet. And so then Pakshak Rinpoche came during the seminar, and by the time he dropped his third curse word, I was just like, you know what, I'm done with this guy.
Mm.
I don't like him. I was just like, this isn't. No, these, I don't care who he's the nephew of or what he's I don't care. Like, this guy, I don't like him. And so I didn't go back to any of his teachings afterwards. And so I think it was around like January, he was giving a set of teachings, and people, other students were like, oh, come, he's, like, give it a second chance. I'm like, nah, I really don't like this guy. And he's like, no, come. So I would go, and of course, he looks around the room. He asks people, like, where are you from? What's your story? What are you doing here? So he gets on me, and he's like, where are you from? And I'm like, I'm already kind of bitter. And, I'm just like, please move on. I was like, oh, like, I'm from America. He's like, where? And I'm like, Florida, please move on. and, and he's like, oh, he says, you're black. And he started talking about Paul Thomas, who's also another student of his.
I think
And
I was there.
probably. And he started talking about Paul, and I was like, okay, well, that's great. And then I went to another teaching of his, and he did the same thing, the same point where he's talking to people around the room. And he says to me, he goes, your English is so clear. And so one of my friends who was with me, she turned around and she gave me this look like, don't, just let it go, just let it slide. And he had, whenever he saw me and never interacted with me, he had called me Obama. He kept calling me Obama. And so at that teaching, he could tell I was a little disturbed, and he's like, is everything okay? I was like, yeah, everything's okay. So he was about to move on and ask someone a different question. I said, Rinpoche, I have something to say. It's not okay. I said, when you speak with me, you call me Obama, and it bothers me because it makes me think that you don't see me as a person. You just see me as a black man. That's it. And then he was very sweet and he was very nice. He's like, I don't see you that way. And he says, I see you as a person and I love you. And then I was like, bam, just got a teaching. That was my ego the whole time. Like, he was teaching me about my ego for 3 months now, and I didn't even know it.
Oh,
So it's like, and just like you said, like he just like throws stuff in your face, and he's great. So now I
yeah.
love him. I think he's great.
He's so skillful. Like, he just knows how to bring up your shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
when I first met him, he was like calling me prostitute girl. Like, he was like,
Wow.
because he couldn't remember my name for a minute, So I
Uh-huh.
was like,
Uh-huh.
prostitute girl. And I was like, all right.
Wow.
Yeah.
But he's great. And so what's it like, the student teacher relationship for you?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, devotion has always been really natural to me.
Mm.
And I just love Patrick Rinpoche so much. Like, he's my teacher and he has shared with me the precious teachings of the Buddha.
Mm.
And yeah, um, I just really couldn't ask for a better teacher in my life and just feel grateful every day that I met
Mm-hmm.
him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just to know them and to be in their presence, honestly, it's uh, to anyone who is out there who is seeking something better, when you find your teacher, of course, we've all heard that saying, when the student's ready, the teacher will appear. But when you find your teacher, it's there are no words to describe the comfort, the joy, and the love that you feel when you're in their presence.
Yeah.
It's it's beyond phenomenal. So,
Yeah, I think,
um,
it's like it's the only relationship in our life where person only cares about our awakening.
mm,
Like,
yep,
everybody else has agendas or wants things, and like our teacher just cares about us waking up.
yep, that's it. They're walking human forms of compassion, and I think about that every time I see Chokanee Rinpoche, and every time I've been fortunate enough to be in his presence. I just think, he just like he said, he does this just to help us. He travels all around the world. He sits for hours at a time, and he repeats the same things over and over and over again, you know, with no sense of self gratification or getting something out of it. Just our freedom in mind, our peace of mind.
Mm,
And I always say, if I had 1% of his compassion, I would achieve enlightenment tomorrow. I always say that.
mm,
So I aspire to walk as much in his shoes, and to help others the same way that he has helped me. That's one of the main reasons why this podcast exists, is because I'm here to serve others, and I hope that this podcast can be used as a vehicle to do that. So
may it be so.
yeah, thanks. Oh, getting emotional. That's gonna get edited out. How do you deal now with, I mean, you don't have to go into too much detail, but
Hmm.
the current political environment that exists for Americans, the division, the tension that lies there, the nonstop bombarding of information that comes through our phones, of not necessarily
Mm.
good information. So how do you deal with that on a daily basis?
Well, it's pretty interesting because I started a 21-day retreat on
Hmm.
January 23rd, so like 3 days after Trump was inaugurated.
Was
Um,
that related, or
no,
you'd already planned that? Okay.
honestly, it's been a crazy few months, and I was like, the first chance I get to do a retreat, I have to do it.
Okay.
Um, so it just happened really naturally that way, and it was really interesting being in retreat and like feeling the pulse of America and also having dreams about what's going on and just
Mm.
um, the pure chaos and overwhelm and the emotions and the craziness. Um, so I was like feeling it, but then I was also feeling like, wow, like,
Ashira, hello.
hello,
Uh-oh, we're breaking up.
should we recall?
Um,
Or
I
can you
can hear
hear
you
me?
now.
Okay,
Wait, keep speaking.
I'm speaking.
Okay. Maybe we should stop and then come back.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, I'll call you back.
All right. Okay. Bye.
Bye. Yeah, so it's pretty interesting because I started a 21-day retreat on January 23rd, so just 3 days after Trump was inaugurated. And in retreat, I could like feel the pulse of America and like the chaos. I could just feel everybody freaking out, and then also in my dreams, I was feeling that as well and seeing destruction and craziness. And um, it was really interesting to notice though, because like in my apartment and on my cushion, those things weren't happening. And not being connected to social media and getting involved in the chaos um, was really interesting just to observe, like, wow, like this is not happening in my home. So, like, how can we find balance where we can take care of our inner selves and also be engaged in the world and in what's going on? Um, but, I think we need to be radical. I think we need to remember that Donald Trump has Buddha nature, and we can use the power of visualization to see him getting impeached or waking up. And,
Mm-hmm.
I think when our our world is crazy, it's a great opportunity to really practice because it's
Yes.
easy to be out of balance, to get
Right.
caught up in the stories and the stories and the stories and the emotions. And um, I think it's a tricky balance being engaged, but also not getting caught up in it.
Right. And so you hit on something that's really important there, because so many of the great teachers will tell you, it's pretty good to be at peace with the world when you're, you know, in your home sitting on your cushion, and you got maybe some incense going and some good mood lighting. But the true practice comes when you're living your day-to-day life. you know
Yeah.
that's the true practice time, that non-cushion time. So you said how Don- I'm gonna try not to laugh. Of course, I know it to be true with Donald Trump. Of course, is Buddha nature. Um, how can I how can I sympathize with Donald Trump and wish him well when I feel as if sometimes he may not necessarily wish me well in return?
Yeah. Well, he definitely doesn't wish you well, or hardly anybody. But
Uh-huh.
it's kind of funny. I was like on Instagram the other day and I looked up Ivanka Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And if you haven't done that, I highly recommend you do because
Mm-hmm.
she's got these really sweet videos of her children.
Yeah.
And it made me soften to her,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
and to also realize, like, yeah, poor kids, they've got this crazy grandpa.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that's really such a great practice to love someone who doesn't love you back
Mm-hmm.
and to have compassion and be like, Ninja, poor Donald. Like, he
Yeah.
had a dominating father who probably abused him, and he probably has a small penis. Like, poor guy, poor guy. Like, he has to act out this way. Like, he's probably not very happy,
Right.
you know? He's
Right.
suffering.
You're right. I think he does suffer too. If you look at some of his posts, like if you look at the timeline, sometimes in the middle of the night, there were like 4 or 5 hours in between, so one tweet in which he's angry, and then 5 hours later, there's another tweet in which he's angry. So, like, there is stuff that keeps him up at night, and it's not like 1 or 2 nights, it's like almost every night. So this man truly suffers. His
Yeah.
mind is not at rest, and I wouldn't wish that on anyone. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. And it just goes to show you that, I mean, look, he lived in this penthouse that's lined with gold and all of this stuff, gold and marble, and all those things have not made him happy.
Hmm.
They haven't made him content. He's had a successful business at times, and it just hasn't made him happy. His mind is still so bothered. So you're right. I there are times when I definitely do have compassion for him, and I really like Ivanka. I really do. I've seen her in several interviews
Mm.
and read on several magazine stories, and I really think she's a good, genuine person. I
Yeah.
really do. And I hope that she has some major influence on her father, because we all really need her to at this point to be
Yeah.
that person, that voice of reason for him.
Yeah. I don't know if she will be able to get through to him, but um, I was thinking yesterday, I was like, someday she's going to come out with like an expose about like everything that happened behind the
Mm.
scenes.
Yeah, probably after he passes away, like there will be
Yeah.
the true story. So, do you think protesting is healthy spiritually?
Um, I don't know. I think for some people it is definitely. For me
Mm-hmm.
personally, like it's not my thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think I think it can be effective, but I don't know. We'll have to see how things go.
Uh-huh.
I think people who are protesting and are getting really involved need a lot of self-care as
Mm-hmm.
well because it's easy to just fight and to get burned out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And really we need like sustainable protesting,
Mm-hmm.
like where people we can do this long term if needed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've sustainable protesting. I've just, because I see people out there and they're getting out there and they're marching, and people are not going to work because for the immigration ban, and um, all that's fine. But just like you said, sustainable protests. Like how do we really do that in the long term? Because his term is 4 years, so we can't riot every weekend for the next 4 years. We can't keep missing
Hmm.
days of work. So how do people get their voice across? But I also I I would really love to see the attitude change, as
Hmm.
opposed to we hate Donald Trump, and we hate the cabinet and the administration, as opposed
Hmm.
to trying to guide them into
Hmm.
making decisions that come from a better place, because people really just want you know to feel good. People want to have a free and easy life, and if people could convey that message of we really just want to have peace and love, we want to help people, like refugees
Hmm.
who have lost their home. How terrible is that? Of course we want to give them some time and space here in the US, but
Hmm.
I hope that people just aren't too angry when they're going
Hmm.
about it.
Yeah, it's interesting because like there's a good chance like Donald Trump is a narcissist.
Mm.
And actually the way you get your way with narcissists is by loving them.
Mm.
You say,
Yeah.
"Donald, we love what you're doing for these people. Keep doing it." Like
Yeah.
um and like, all the emotions are going to rise with this situation. But I think we need to be skillful and honestly, I think we need to impeach Donald Trump as quickly as possible. I don't know. I started visualizing that in my retreat. I was just like, it just came to me clearly. It was like, no, he needs to get impeached really quickly. Like, we've given him a shot,
Uh-huh.
and he's doing illegal stuff. So, as it's been predicted, this will probably be the shortest presidency
A lot of
ever.
people are saying that. A
Yeah.
lot of people are saying that. A lot of people are saying he won't make it to 4 years. And I really just, because of the magnitude of the influence that we have around the world, whether he stays in office or not, like I still want the U.S. to be, and I call me a patriot, but I really want the U.S. to be a beacon of hope, a beacon of light, and
Yeah.
to stand by everything that's printed on the Statue of Liberty, and to be an example to the rest of the world of what a running democracy looks like.
Yeah.
That's what I want, and I just miss Barack Obama.
I
I
know.
really do. Like, I was on YouTube watching some clips the other day of like some of his old press conferences. I'm like, God, he's so presidential. Like, I miss him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We had it good.
we really did. Even with George W. Bush, never
Yeah.
thought I would. I mean, for so many years back then, I was just like, oh, I'm not really sure about this guy. But he said things like, after 9/11, he immediately said, "This is not Islam. Islam is love."
Yeah.
And he hosted the first Ramadan dinner that year
Wow.
after September 11th. And I was like, we need more people like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that like the fact that the Bushes wouldn't support Trump was really important
Mm-hmm.
and courageous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I heard that when they went to vote, they left that part blank. The
Mm,
presidential part, they left that blank. So
yeah.
we'll get back there. We will.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes things have to get worse to get better.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's happening. And I think we can't like get too attached to all this being real. And, this is when emptiness practice is really helpful too. And just seeing that everything changes. It's not stagnant and stuck. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's a blessing from my Lama. That's what I keep telling myself. It's a blessing from my Lama.
mm,
Gives me an opportunity to think and to practice and to be a better person. But Ashira, that is everything that I wanted to ask you today. Thank you so much for coming on. You are podcast number one, episode number one, guest number one. So you'll forever be the bar that everyone else has to hold themselves up to.
wow.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me and for all of your love and support. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your candor.
Thank you, Marvin. I'm so happy you're doing this. And I'm really grateful that you reached out to me. And I hope that I set the bar at a decent spot.
It's very high now. It's real high. Oh, before we go, is there anything else that we could plug? So, of course, I'm going to put all the links in my show
Okay.
notes for Jewel and Lotus and for the organizations that we spoke about, and also for Pack Talk Rinpoche. And I'm going to put that in there. Is there anything else that you wanted people to be aware of?
Yeah, so I'm actually starting an exciting new project. It's called The Conscious Bohemian, and
Hmm.
it's the marriage of sustainable living and bohemianism.
Okay.
But it's actually very much inspired by my Buddhist practice, and
Okay.
I'm really excited about it. So go follow it on Instagram at The
Awesome.
Conscious Bohemian. I'm going to be blogging. I'm going to write a book. Maybe I'll do a podcast or two.
Ooh.
Yeah, so check it out. So The Conscious Bohemian, Salila Rising, Jewel and Lotus, those are my places.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely go there, check them out. They have some really beautiful jewelry and beautiful craft, and I just go check it out. It's amazing stuff. And when you're buying these things, you're definitely supporting a good cause and helping people directly. So I would encourage everyone to go and check it out.
Yes. Thank you.
And a very special thank you to everyone who's listening to this podcast. Please visit my website, millennialbuddhist.com. You can also get in contact with me through Facebook and Instagram, Millennial Buddhist. Let me know what you think. If you like it, if you don't like it, if you want to see something change, or maybe there's someone you want to hear from. Definitely hit me up on social media and stay tuned for our next episode.